I think someday we will thank God for the prayers that he didn't answer the way that we asked, as much as the ones that he did answer, because God is omniscient. And I want to be careful here, because every prayer has to pass a twofold litmus test. It has to be in the will of God and for the glory of God. This isn't about us outlining our agenda to God or telling him when or where or how to do what he does. Everything was once a whisper. God said, "Let there be light." Now, I'm not sure if that was a whisper, Matt, that might have been the outside voice, but God breathes into the dust and Adam becomes a living being. In a sense, every dimension of creation is a reflection of those four words, and those four words are still creating those galaxies. And so the voice of God is the genesis of everything. And it's just amazing. It's mind-boggling, right? Because our voices are pretty much good for talking and singing, and yet here's the voice of God that has this ability to turn water into wine, that can stand up in a boat and rebuke the wind and say to the waves, "Peace, be still," and nature has to obey its creator. And so it's not about our volume. It's not even about the combination of the 26 letters of the English alphabet. It's really about hearing the voice of God, and that voice is love and light and peace and joy and 1,000 other things.
I love it. You're known as a man of prayer. You've written the prayer circle, but you've talked so much that I think has blessed so many people about the bravest prayer, Mark. And for some people, that's a hard prayer sometimes. Just believing, and your own testimony has been such an amazing story for so many people. Can you talk about the bravest prayer?
Well, on July 2nd, 2016, I felt prompted to pray a brave prayer. I had asthma, severe asthma, for 40 years. It was my first memory as a child. I would sleep with an inhaler under my pillow, played basketball with an inhaler in my sock. And so it seemed impossible, but I felt like God wanted me to pray this prayer of faith that he would heal my lungs. Now, Laurie, part of why I call it a brave prayer is because I had asked God hundreds of times, but it hadn't happened. But you know what? I just felt like I needed to continue to ask, continue to believe. And so that was more than 4.5 years ago. I have not touched an inhaler. As you know, I went and ran the Chicago Marathon to celebrate that miracle. And so I just... Don't you sometimes feel like you're just living on borrowed time? Like it's all gravy from here forward. Like just God is so good. Yes. And that miracle just changed my life, because now anything's possible. The way you steward a miracle, I think, is by believing God for even bigger and better miracles. And so when you experience victory, now you have spiritual authority. Right. To begin exercising that faith and exercising that testimony, not just for you, but for other people in your life.
What do you say to the people that you give a lot of stories in this book about hearing God's voice, for Ebenezer's, for where you were supposed to live, and some of those things that didn't happen, that took time, but then it all came back around, your home, all that stuff. What about for people that have felt that they heard God's voice and stepped out, but it didn't happen right then? What do you say?
Well, Matt and Laurie, the first thing I would say is that I have been there and done that. Our very first attempt at church planting was a failure. And it was confusing and embarrassing. And yet now I look back and see how God used that to get us from Chicago to Washington, D.C. And so we're like, Lord, thank you, thank you, thank you. But I think someday we will thank God for the prayers that he didn't answer the way that we asked
Right.
as much as the ones that he did answer, because God is omniscient. And I want to be careful here, because every prayer has to pass a twofold litmus test. It has to be in the will of God and for the glory of God. This isn't about us outlining our agenda to God or telling him when or where or how to do what he does. This is about us exercising the faith. I have a question today for everybody who's watching. Is he able?
Yes.
Listen, he's not just able. He's able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine, according to his power that's at work within us. And so don't give up on God. God has not given up on you.